Everybody, this is Cecil Alexander with Jazz Lesson Videos, and today we're going to be talking about 7 very important chord progressions for you as a jazz musician to be able to play over confidently. These are chord progressions that are going to pop up in a lot of different standards that you'll find in the Great American Songbook, and they really give you the tools to be able to play over most tunes confidently and coherently. If you're interested in furthering your ability to play over these chord progressions, you can feel free to check out my latest resource with Jazz Lesson Videos, 70 Straight Ahead Phrases. Each section has about 10 different phrases using straight ahead language to outline the harmony of those chord progressions. You can also feel free to use the coupon code CA5 for an additional $5 off. So let's jump into our first phrase, which is going to be over the major 2-5-1, which is probably the most common chord progression in all of jazz. Pretty much every standard that you come across in the real book will have this chord progression in it. We're going to be in the key of C, and we have our 2 chord, which is D minor 7, moving to our 5 chord, which is G7, and then into our 1, which is C major 7. So this phrase is going to use a lot of different concepts to weave our way through the harmony. We start off with a diatonic approach, just going from the 4th to the flat 3rd of D minor 7. And then we have a longer sort of enclosure that's going to make our way from C natural into D natural. So here's the enclosure by itself. So we start on C, up a half step to D flat, and then we move above our target, so E, E flat, and then back below our target, C sharp, into D finally. Then we move our way up to F, which is going to be the flat 7th of our 5 chord, G7. Just kind of going up the scale from the 5th to the flat 7th. And then we have what's called a pivot arpeggio, outlining sort of an F major 7 idea. So we have the notes F, G sharp, which is going to be a chromatic approach, into A, C, and E. So if you look at the outline of that, or the skeleton of that figure, we just have F, A, C, and E, which will be the notes of F major 7, and against G7, that's going to give us the flat 7th, 9th, 11th, and 13th. And then we move into our 1 chord, where we're going to start on our 3rd. We have a chromatic approach from the 6th to the 5th, and then sort of a little rhythmic decoration kind of derived from the C major pentatonic scale. Just kind of a melodic finish to the phrase. So here's the full phrase slowly. And then up to speed. So our next chord progression is going to be another very common jazz chord progression. This is called the 3-6-2-5, and to be more specific, we have 3 minor 7 into 6-7, or the 5-7 of 2, so that's a secondary dominant chord, and then our 2 minor 7 and the 5-7. So this is going to be more of a stretched out version of the chord progression, but occasionally in tunes like Rhythm Changes, you might see this progression condensed into being 2 beats per chord, so a little bit faster harmonic rhythm. So we're going to start on our E minor 7, the 3 minor 7 chord. We start on our 11th, down chromatically using sort of a chromatic approach that has a little bit of rhythmic variation built into it, to the 9th, so from the 4th or the 11th to the 9th. And that note, that G flat or F sharp, is technically outside of the key, but it's great for getting a little bit more color on the 3 minor 7 chord. Then we just move down into the 3rd of A7, so smooth voice leading there, landing on the 3rd on beat 1. And then we leap up a major 7th, so from the 3rd to the sharp 9th, which is one of my favorite things to do on a dominant chord for some more color. And then we get to the flat 9 of that chord, B flat, and that's also going to be part of a sort of a diatonic approach into the root of that chord. Chromatic note G sharp into A, and then we move chromatically down to G. to hit the 11th on D minor 7, and then we have kind of a mix of a diatonic approach and a chromatic approach, so this is a sort of a two-part phrase. So there's our diatonic portion, and then our chromatic portion is going to start on F sharp. And I really like the sound of those chromatic approaches or enclosures that have a little bit of rhythm built into them. It just gives you one less thing to think about when you're improvising. So we're putting that F sharp on a strong beat, and then a little trill to move into F natural on a strong beat. And then we leap down a sixth to A natural, and then we finally finish our phrase on E natural. Again, a melodic ending going from the 6th or the 13th down to the 5th. So here's the whole phrase slowly. And here it is up to speed. Our next phrase is going to be over the minor 2-5-1, which is usually thought of as being a little bit more difficult than the major 2-5-1, just because it forces you to use some non-diatonic notes, namely the major third of the 5 chord. So we're in the key of C minor. We have D minor 7 flat 5, or 2 minor 7 flat 5 to G 7 flat 9, the 5 7, and then into C minor 7. So we're going to start on the root of our D minor 7 flat 5. We have D, and then we sort of go down what's kind of similar to like an F minor 7 arpeggio. So you could think of this D as being like a diatonic approach into the flat 7th and then down the arpeggio. But then we grab E natural, which will be against D minor 7, the natural 9th, but I'm thinking of it as more of like a chromatic approach from the 11th into F, which is going to be the flat 7th of G7. Then from G7, we go up sort of a half whole diminished scale, skipping over E natural on the way up. And that's one of my favorite sounds over the 5 chord on a minor 2-5. So one more time. And then we have sort of a diatonic approach to lead into the flat third of C minor 7. And then from there, you'll notice this familiar shape. This is like an E flat major 7 pivot arpeggio. So again, we have this dip down into F sharp, which is going to be a chromatic approach into G, and then B flat and D. So again, the outline of that will be E flat, G, B flat, D, just with some octave displacement. And then we land finally on A natural, which is going to be the natural 6 of C minor 7, sort of borrowed from the Dorian scale, or you could think of it as related to the C melodic minor scale, which is a really colorful sound over the 1 minor 7. And then we just again state that natural 6. So the phrase slowly will sound like this. And then up to speed. So our next phrase is going to be over the backdoor 2-5 progression, or more specifically F minor 7, B flat 7 to C major 7, or 4 minor 7 flat 7 7, 1 major 7. This will also pop up in a lot of different tunes. The first one that comes to mind is the tune Lady Bird by Tad Dameron. So we start on F sharp, which against F minor 7 is going to be the flat 9, but it's part of an approach. So we have an approach from F sharp into A flat, and then we use again that pivot arpeggio shape, this time without the rhythmic variation and without the chromatic approach. So this is going to be A flat major 7, A flat, C, E flat, and G, which is going to give us against B flat 7, the 11th, and the 13th. Then we have a chromatic enclosure into E natural, so F, E flat into E, and then we do a chromatic approach from G into A, which is going to give us the 13th or the natural 6th of C major 7, and then we move that down to the 5th, and then sort of a common ending for major 7 chords, we have this phrase, which highlights the 9th as well as the major 7th and the 13th of C major 7. So the phrase slowly will sound like this. And then up to speed. So our next phrase is going to outline the 1 major 7 and a 2-5 into the 6 minor 7 chord. You'll see this in tunes like There'll Never Be Another You, as well as Confirmation by Charlie Parker. So we start with C major 7, and then we have our 7 minor 7 flat 5, B minor 7 flat 5, E7 will be the 5-7 of 6, and then into the 6 minor 7, which is A minor 7. So we start on the 5th of C major 7, and then an extra chromatic note added to get into the 7th on a strong beat, and then we move down the scale from the 9th into the 6th, which is A natural, and then that 6th is going to become the flat 7th of B minor 7 flat 5. We add in a chromatic passing tone to get from A to G, and then we continue sort of down the scale. Then I add this D flat on a strong beat, which again, E7 is going to be the natural 13th, which is a cool sound for a little extra color because it's so far removed from the key center. And then we use that as part of a chromatic approach to lead into the 9th of A minor 7, have a diatonic approach from the 9th into the flat 3rd, leap down a 6th into E natural, which will be the 5th. And then we have kind of again, this like decorated chromatic enclosure with some rhythmic variation added. So that's getting us from the 9th into the root, up the scale to the flat 3rd, and then we use that natural 6th again, sort of as a nice tag or button to the phrase. So the whole phrase will sound like this slowly. And then up to speed. So our next progression will be the 1 minor 7, a 2-5 to the flat 6. So this will come up in tunes like Sunny. It's a really popular chord progression in R&B. You'll also find it in Just the Two of Us by Bill Withers. So we start with our 1 minor 7, which is C minor 7. Then we have B flat minor 7, which will be like the flat 7 minor 7, if you want to think of it that way. But it's part of a 2-5. So B flat minor 7, E flat 7, which will be a secondary dominant leading into the flat 6 major 7, which is A flat major 7. So we start our phrase on the root. We just go up the scale from the root to the 5th. And then we have a 5-3-2-1 melodic cell, or more specifically 5 flat 3-2-1 on C minor 7. And then coincidentally, those last two notes, D and C, are going to be part of an enclosure into D flat, which will be the flat 3rd of B flat minor 7. And then we're kind of outlining a D flat major 7 arpeggio, which against B flat minor 7 will give you tension 9. So we add in a passing tone to get to the 3rd, so that E flat is outside of the arpeggio. And then we continue up to the 9th of that arpeggio, that E flat, which will then be the root of our E flat 7. And then we highlight some altered tensions. So we have the root, the sharp 5 of E flat 7, which is B. G is going to be the 3rd, and then we have the root again down the octave. So cool augmented sound. Then we grab B flat, which will be the 9th of A flat major 7. We use that as part of a diatonic approach to get to the root, and then up an A flat major 7 arpeggio and landing on the 6th, which is F natural. So the whole phrase will sound like this slowly. And then up to speed. So our last chord progression is going to be 1 major 7 and then a minor 2-5 to lead into the 3 minor 7. This will pop up in the B section of Yardbird Suite as well as My One and Only Love. So we have C major 7, which will be our 1 major 7, F sharp minor 7 flat 5, which will be the sharp 4 minor 7 flat 5, B7 flat 9 will be the 5-7 of 3, so a secondary dominant, and then finally E minor 7 will be our 3 minor 7. So we start this phrase actually the same way that we started our phrase that was the 1 and the 2-5 to the 6. So this little outline on C major 7, that chromatic passing tone to lead into the major 7th, and then again we have this 9th falling on a strong beat, the root of C major 7, and then down to the 5th and back up to that B natural, which will become the 11th of F sharp minor 7 flat 5. Then we put in this chromatic passing tone to lead into the flat 3rd, and then down the scale into F sharp, which will become the 5th of B7 flat 9, and then we continue down the scale to lead into the 3rd on a strong beat. Once we get to E minor 7, again we're using some outside of the scale notes. Typically when you see a 3 minor 7 chord, you might think to use Phrygian, but again when you have the chord for this amount of time, it's cool to emphasize some notes that are outside of the key, like the 9th and the 13th or the 6th, which you'll see in a second. So we use a B minor 7 arpeggio, which is just built off the 5th of the chord to grab that 9th, that F sharp, and the 11th, and then from the 11th we do a diatonic approach to lead into the flat 3rd, and we again have this pivot arpeggio, so the notes will be G down to A sharp, B, D, and F sharp, so that outline is G major 7 just with a chromatic approach. So you take out that chromatic approach, you then have G, B, D, and F sharp. And then the next measure we land on the 6 on a strong beat, which is super colorful sound. And then just again, we restate the 6 like we have on a couple of the other phrases. So the full phrase put together will sound like this slowly. And then up to speed. So if you want to check out some more phrases on these different chord progressions, feel free to check out my latest resource with JLV 70 straight ahead phrases. The resource includes tab and notation in all 12 keys. Thanks for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.